So where was the Ikshvaku tribe in all this? Were they with the Tritsutes? I mean, were they with Sudas?
There is in the Rigveda there is no situation where the Trikshi means the Western Ikshvaku. So the Trikshis were with Sudas, but maybe in the earlier generations, because we have a king named Manthata, who is an ancestor of Trasatasyu and Purukutsa, who is a pre-Rigvedic king. And he also belonged to the same Western Ikshvaku. I mean, he's basically a little more ancestral for both the Eastern and Western Ikshvaku. So Manthada is basically like, for example, Manu is the topmost ancestor. After that, Ikshvaku is given the status the son of Manu. Just like Ila is the daughter of Manu, Ikshvaku is considered a son of Manu. So it's a very ancient figure. So we cannot really trust the son father son relationship, but at least we know that he's a very ancient king. So Ikshvaku, Ila, and Manu, all of them are pre-Rigvedic, very ancient king. Within few in the in if you the lineages emerging from Ikshvaku and Manu, Ila, everything is you get in only in the in the Mahabharata, Ramayana, Aitihasic literature and Puranic literature. In that sequence of the kings, you see Mandhata coming somewhere after 3 4 kings. A few kings after Ikshvaku, you have Manthada. So he is also a pre-Rigvedic king, like Bharata. King Bharata also lived earlier than the earlier Rigveda period. So he is also earlier than 3300 BC, etc. So you can actually, because we don't know how many number of generations elapsed in between because of sparse data. So this Bharata may be 3300 BC or he may also be 4000 BC. We don't know that. Similar case Ikshvaku also. So then in that somewhere around the pre-Rigvedic period, the Manthada is somewhat like King Bharata pre-Rigvedic. And the Manthada is mentioned as like in alliance with some of the ancestors of Tritsus when they were living together in the Kurukshetra, that is the Varaprathivya region. And Manthada on his own account, he actually fought with some Western enemies and made them to flee westwards. So Sudas comes in only later in the picture. Manthada is a king who is earlier than Sudas, who have fought with the Western enemies. That basically that what they mean is the enemies to the west of Parishni River, living in this Chanab or Asikni, the river of Asuras. So from there was some enemies came, and then Manthada went from his own kingdom, which I identify with between Yamuna and Saraswati in the Kurukshetra or Jangala region. From there, he went westwards and defeated them there. So he was so aggressive that he went there and defeated them, made them flee. And it has happened many hundred years before Sudas. So you can see some early period they were all cooperating together. Like even Anava king Abhyavartin Chayamana and Suda's ancestor Srinjaya Devavada, they were together. So if you go into further in the past, you will see so many people are allied together, but conflicts emerge later. When some of the king in a particular lineage become dominant, then the conflicts emerge. But even then, maybe the migration of the Trikshis to the Sarayu, Western Sarayu and Sindhu region happened much before Sudas, because of we don't see any conflict with Sudas in the Rigveda with the Trikshis.
Right, sir. Thank you. Another one thing that just crossed my mind was there are these people called Kalash people, even present right now. I mean, very beautiful women and very beautiful people. Now, they are somewhere in Pakistan or towards that side. Uh, are they a part of any tribe? What we mentioned here?
Yeah, yeah, Kalash people get a lot of attention. So primarily, um, see, between this tribe, in which tribe they belong, we cannot be very clear. We cannot be very clear about it. But some of what I think is that there are the Gandharva people in the Gandhara region.
Yes,
And,
yes.
see, typically the females of the Gandharvas, there is, see, we are tempted to say that they are Apsaras, but there is a term called Gandharvi, and the term Gandharvi is even recorded from the Rigvedic period itself. So the Gandharva and Gandharvi forms as ethnic tribal group. The males are Gandharvas and the females are Gandharvis, and they are in the Gandhara region. So Apsara basically cannot be taken as the female form of the Gandharvas. So they are very much similar tribe, similar very much, maybe even Gandharvas themselves, but getting a different ethnic name. And they were living in the regions to the east of the Gandhara region. That is where these Kalash people. So they can be considered as the Apsara families, Apsara groups. And I say this because even the Pururavas, Urvashi kind of interaction happened in that same region to the west of Kashmir. You see the what you call the Uri sector, Uri, and so some regions in the mountains to the west of Kashmir Valley, right? Uri and Sukna sector. I'm just remembering from the newspaper headlines. Because in the Mahabharata there is a Janavada named Kamboja in that region, and to that west of that there are regions called which is related to the ancestral called native place of Urvashi, etc. So that entire area to the west of Kashmir Valley after the mountains, that is the India-Pakistan border, in that Pakistan region, the Kalash people are also located in that region. So these also like in geographical analysis, this region turn out to be the Apsara region where the Apsaras are living. Like Urvashi is very much clearly living in that region, and that is where Pururavas met Urvashi there. All these things are very clearly like in the geographical analysis is very clearly mentioned. So Purura was basically a product of the Haryana plains because the Manu established in Haryana and like in the earliest. So you can have a correlation between Birana and Manu. So Manu's earliest settlement in Birana, and then 3-4 generation from Manu is Pururava. So he is basically a Saraswati River Valley child. I mean, he's born in the Saraswati Valley, and he went on an expedition to the northwest mountains, etc. And the Urvashi, and he got infatuated with Urvashi, and he marries her, and then there is a very short-lived marriage. Again, that is mentioned in the Rig Veda, like after giving birth to a son, Ayus. Even Ayus also historically mentioned in Rig Veda. It's not just in Puranas. So Urvashi gave birth to Pururava's son Ayus, and then she leaves. She leaves Pururava's and went on herself because that is the nature of Apsaras. They don't believe in any family relationship, marriage, and they don't leave as wives, etc. So after giving birth to Ayus, Pururava's son Urvashi leaves. And then Pururavas is very sad, and then there is a conversation between Pururavas and Urvashi. This is poet. This all happened very ancient period, but the poet of 10th Mandala created a sutta on a conversation between Urvashi and Pururavas. That is a very beautiful poetry in the 10th Mandala. You can see it. And so what it indicates is that region, the Kalash region, is a region of the Apsaras. And among all the tribes like Gandharva, Yaksha, Rakshasa, or Kinnara, Kimpurusha, Apsaras, we have to connect the Kalash people with the Apsara people.
Right, sir. So there is Vashisht Agastya, weren't they born of an Apsara only? So could it be said that they were born from that region somewhere?
Correct. Yeah, that is a very interesting question because I could not mention that in my talk. Why is this Vasishta have it's as if Vasishta would have two homes. So Vasishta also like that lineage of Vasishta also born and grown up and evolved in the Saraswati region in the Paraprathivya region. But Vasishta happened to be just like Purura was married from the Apsara region. Who were the father of Vasishta and Agastya, which they poetically mention in this Mitra and Varuna. But I consider it as some ancient rishi who worshipped both Mitra and Varuna. So that is why he is
Yes,
called Mitra Varuni. So it's not like the gods themselves being the father of Vasishta, and two gods cannot become a father of a son. So
right.
basically, it's a Mitra Varuni has to be considered as a historical person who was the father of the most ancient Vasishta and Agastya, the twins. And he married from the Apsara region. That is why he is connected with Vasishta and Agastya are mentioned as like sons of Urvashi.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So lastly, just in Mahabharata, you see that Arjun had to leave. I mean, when they were in the one, Arjun went to Indra's abode for
Hmm.
weapons.
Mhm.
So on that side, again where he met the Apsaras. So could it be contrived that he went towards that side?
Yeah, yes, yes. So, in the Mahabharata, it happened after the late Ṛgvedic period, a few hundred years, just 100 years
Okay.
after the 1 century after the late Ṛgvedic period. By that time, Apsaras were everywhere. Like even, for example, because of the trade relationship which are active in, I mentioned in my book, The Rivers of Rigveda, trade network started coming even slightly from the early Rigvedic period. We have Panis and etc. But in the middle and late Rigvedic period, you have so many number of trade networks connecting the Himalayan Ladakh region to the Gujarat seashore, etc. And even Uttarabhada also formed slightly like not even though not going up to Bihar, the Uttarabhada that is starting from the Gandharva region, that is Gandhara up to Hastinapura or even up to a little bit eastwards up like up to Kampilya. So definitely that Uttarabhada also was ready, and the remaining part of Uttarabhada was being developed. And during the Pandavas and Rama's period, it's already there. Like of course, like the up to Ayodhya, we don't have any doubt that much Uttarabhada is there. So because of that, the Gandharvas and Apsaras were traveling everywhere. They were there. That is why in the Ramayana, forget about Mahabharata. In Ramayana, we see Apsaras in the Gandharvas and Apsaras in the region, in that Lanka region also. And then Ravana is going a little bit southward from the Lanka region in the mouth of Narmada, little bit southwards to meet Maricha's region, which I identify with one of the Harappan settlements to the south of Bhagatrao Island in the mouth of Narmada, in the Maharashtra region, like to the north of Bombay. There is a very interesting Harappan settlement, very ancient, like 2000 BC Harappan settlement, 2000 or 2500 BC. So that is candidate location for Maricha location. Even there, the Apsaras and Gandharvas were there. So why they are there? Because part of the trade networks. So along with the trade, they reach all these regions. And so Mahabharata period is even later to the Ravana and Rama's period, slightly many more decades elapsed. So at that time, Apsaras were there. So they, for example, there are centers of power. So the major center of power of Yakshas were there on the Himalayas, and Yaksha kings Vaisravana and now subsequent descendants of Vaisravana all described as Kubera or Vaisravana because they're famous king, named after the famous king. So Vaisravana was a very common, very powerful king, part of this trade network, and become very rich because of the trade network, very living closer to the this Kailas region. So definitely, when there is a power, there will be all the Apsaras and Gandharvas also will be there. So when Arjuna went to that region, so basically the Devaloka, basically mentioned Divi, it is also called like Vishtapa, which means elevated terrain. Another synonym of Swarga is elevated terrain. And it is very clear based on the geography where when people are rishis are going to Swarga or Arjuna is going to Swarga. When you trace the geography, they are all going to Tibet. And Tibet is an elevated terrain. And that is what they are describing as Vishtapa. And there are three elevated plains, that is Trivishtapa. There are three different Swargas. So it can be like the Tibetan Plateau, the Kashmir Valley, and some other elevated plains in that same Himalayan region. So Vishtapa is another synonym of Swarga. So that is where these people are going. So Indra's domain is somewhere in that Yaksha territory along Kailas and Manasarovar, like lake. Somewhere in that region there was a Indra, and Indra we already said it is a title actually. So there was a power of I mean just like the Yaksha, there was a power ruling that region, and that leader of that power is called Indra. And he invited Arjuna, and then you have some advanced weapons, you get some advanced weapons etc from that region. And I am just the archaeologically there are some evidence coming that there was a very special kind of people living in this Manasara or Kailas Tibetan region, and their facial features and ethnic features resemble the northwestern, the Gandhara region and northwestern, currently whatever is northwestern Pakistan, and then Kashmir, and then Himachal Pradesh, Haryana, that kind of facial features, and they are settled as an ancient culture in the Himalayan region. So this can be correlated with these ancient powers who were in this Himalayan region.
Right, so thank you. I'll let somebody else ask this question now. Sorry.
Yeah. Any other questions?
No, sir.
So, sir, if there's no one, I just have one more. That,
Yeah.
sir, in Ramayana, this is not related to today's topic, but I was just curious about it. What do you think was the Pushpak Viman? Was it, this is just something that I conjure, was it that before the Rathas were driven by buffaloes and mules, as mentioned, but maybe the Pushpak Viman was something that was driven by a horse?
Yes. So I have a very, because there are so data inside the Ramayana is very, we can say very much secondary, because it is very clear from the narrative that the poet himself is confused about the Pushpaka Vimana, because
Yes,
of which he sometimes still that the Pushpaka Vimana is driven by horses, and sometimes he says it's driven by swans. The
yeah,
both are present in the Ramayana. So because of which it is a secondary information. So somebody else have seen some kind of flying vehicle, and later it is communicated to a poet. The poet communicated to another poet, like that 2 3 times communicated. That distortion we can see, and then it is written in the Ramayana. So because of that, we cannot relay everything about written in that Ramayana about Pushpaka Vimana. But only thing is, at a very broader level, we can say that they were exposed to some kind of a flying vehicle. Uh, so then, when I say that, automatically people think, oh, there is some aliens, etc. There is a possibility, but as a kind of a meticulous researcher, I cannot confirm or conclude that that is the only reason. That is the only thing. And same thing I have mentioned in my second book, Geography of Ramayana. So you can read that, in which I have different theories related to the Pushpaka Vimana is mentioned, including some experiment with air balloons. And then also the Vimana, from the root word of the Vimana, basically it is a structure, because the word Vimana is used in the Ramayana to represent some buildings also. So you can say that way, say Vimanas in Ayodhya, Vimanas in all the different cities they are mentioned. So that time Vimana means that particular building structure. It is a tall. See, whenever you have created a building, the tallest part is called the Vimana. That is a real terminology. So the poet is using that terminology, like creating some kind of a special readers, exciting the reader. So he is creating that impression of a moving Vimana instead of its original meaning of a structure, building structure. He is using it as a like a moving vehicle kind of a concept. And whenever there is a moving vehicle, it is always like a flying chariot versus flying chariot driven by horses versus a flying vehicle driven by swans, sometimes compared to clouds. So it's so much of variation. So we can't say that it's an author. It's like a 100% first person narrative. But you don't be disappointed, because in the Mahabharata there is a little more detailed mention of Vimana when Arjuna is picked up by Matali. That is even more detailed. Unfortunately, the people don't look into the books. But Vimana narrative is more powerful and more detailed in Mahabharata compared to Ramayana. And that is coming through my third book, The Geography of Ramayana, in the January of 2024, next year, January, where it is the poet is little more meticulous, talking about machinery inside the Vimana, like gas chambers and so many more details. And that I have put in a very little highlight. See, I can dismiss Ramayana's Vimana as a pure poetic imagination or confused narrative of third person, fourth person, etc. But there is some good quality of in terms of the data present in the Mahabharata, where it mentioned about Arjuna picked up in a Vimana driven by Matali, here taking him from the one of the Himalayan peak and crossing the high Himalayan mountains and landing in Tibet. The entire narrative is beautiful, perfect, with a less. I mean, it looks more realistic to me compared to the Ramayana's Vimana narratives.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much. And so, which is the book that we should refer to for the translation in English for the critical version of Ramayana of Baroda?
Yes, so in this Bhandarkar Oriental Research, they have put that critical edition of Ramayana in Sanskritam from the Baroda. That is the primary reference that you can use. And then you can use any kind of English translations to correlate it. That is what I did. So I use this Baroda Sanskrit version of the Ramayana and then in the critical edition and compare it with the available translations like Vivek de Broy and some other Western translations. So what we do is we don't have to go along with the translations because we already have the Sanskrit verses in front of us. So whenever translation deviates, that also we can actually understand from the Sanskrit these slokas. So you have to use the Sanskrit slokas as a primary driver, and only for meanings you can have referred to one or two translations. That is what I have done, two or three, or as many number, that many is better. So you can see the variations that translator making compared to the original in the Sanskrit. That is the one best way of doing the research on this. Same thing for data for the Mahabharata. And then you can actually get a lot of insights and inference.
Right, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
So I think we can close. It was a long discussion. And you can, like any kind of similar questions, you can look at the Rivers of Ṛgveda, the book. You can purchase it. You will not be disappointed. Because I see a lot of traction in the scholar community on the book. More people are getting know about it, and more people are like buying and reading it, and I'm really happy about it. And then the second book, Geography of Ramayana, actually looks like a Ramayana book, but it is actually a kind of a sequel to the Rivers of Ṛgveda book, solving some of the riddles in the first book. It is solved in the second book. And the third book is also similar. It talks about Mahabharata, but basically it continues from the Ramayana. And of course, you can also read the second and third book as a reading Ramayana or reading Mahabharata, because every event in the life of Rama is mentioned in the Ramayana book. All the dialogues, all the conversation of all the people mentioned in the Ramayana. So you can also read it as a Ramayana. You can say narrate. Ramayana is a non-geography book. Also, you can read it, even though there are maps of Ramas. So, but it's supported by geographical information. Same thing about Mahabharata. I thought about writing it pure play geography because Mahabharata is very big, and if I also include all the psychological problems faced by Yudhishthira and Pandavas, all the events and all the dialogues, the book will become larger. But in the interest of the audience, I decided for that second part. So I am including everything. So the book has become 600 pages long, but the readers will find it very interesting because every painful situation in the life of Pandavas, how they grow up and become emperors, how they, very humble beginnings, starting with a very humble beginnings and at the mercy of the enemies, but finally becoming an emperor. All these things are captured in the book, even though it is focusing on the geography, all the emotional turmoil of Yudhishthira and the other Pandavas, how Krishna became a strategic person in helping the Pandavas grow up. Culmination, all the philosophies, everything is mentioned in the book, including the geography part of it. So that is that mixture that we have for the Ramayana, Mahabharata book. Same thing for the Ramayana. Anybody who have the book in their hand, they know that along with geography, the entire life history of Rama and Ravana is mentioned in that. With that, we'll close.
Yes, sir. Okay. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Let's wind up the session with the Shanti Mantra. Om Lokaah Samastaah Sukhino Bhavantu. Lokaah Samastaah Sukhino Bhavantu. Lokaah Samastaah Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Namaः Shivaya. Thank you everyone. Thank you, sir. See you next week.